Hey all, Glenn Kirshner here. So I'm not sure we've seen a month like March before. A month that started out so weak on the justice front, but finished so strong. Because March started with the New York prosecutors resigning from the Trump case because New York District Attorney Alvin Bragg refused to indict Donald Trump. But March ended with reports that the Department of Justice was expanding its criminal investigation, now investigating the planners, the organizers, and the funders of the insurrection, expanding its investigation to include investigating not only the fake electors, but the Trump loyalists and lackeys who were pushing the fake elector criminal scheme. And maybe most importantly, we just learned that for months now, the Department of Justice has been issuing grand jury subpoenas in its criminal investigation. And it's been issuing those subpoenas to, quote, officials in former President Trump's orbit, close quote. So the month of March definitely has justice moving in the right direction. Let's do a quick recap of the legal stories for the month that was March 2022. So we're learning more about the resignations of the two top prosecutors from the New York District Attorney's Office, the prosecutors who were heading up the criminal investigation into Donald Trump and his organization. And friends, it's not a good news story. But let's talk about it. Because justice matters. So February may have been a short month, but it was a pretty eventful month on the legal front. Here's a short recap of the legal stories for the month that was February 2022. So, as the first criminal trial against an insurrectionist, someone who attacked the U.S. Capitol on January 6th, continued to play out in court today, things went from bad to worse for the defendant. And as far as I'm concerned, that's a good thing. Because justice matters. So the House Select Committee investigating the Capitol attack has filed a pleading in federal court, arguing to a judge that they have enough evidence to assert that Donald Trump committed the crime of conspiracy to defraud the United States, conspiracy to defraud the American people in connection with the 2020 presidential election. This is an important development because justice matters. What do you see as the future of rock and roll? And then the second, the finish up question is what's ahead for you professionally? What are you up to?
We are back to being a cult, pretty much back to 1955. And, maybe that's where we belong.
You know what's worse than when government officials, one, refuse to hold criminal politicians accountable, and two, fail to provide any transparency about why they are refusing to hold criminal politicians accountable? Well, what's worse is when three, they're deceptive about the whole thing. Let's talk about what we are learning about New York District Attorney Alvin Bragg killing the criminal investigation into Donald Trump. Because justice matters. So Bill Barr is out on his reputation rehabilitation tour. Tickets aren't exactly selling like hotcakes. But Bill Barr does bring one important piece of evidence to the table, because he has direct evidence of Donald Trump's criminal intent. Let's talk about that. Because justice matters. So friends, can we just take a minute and enjoy the fact that we get to say the following? Today was a pretty good day for justice. Let's talk about that, because justice matters. So let's take on two legal stories that are in the news today. One involves Trump henchman Stephen Miller, and the other, the trial that is underway in Michigan involving the plot to kidnap Governor Whitmer. Let's do a quick legal update of these two stories, because justice matters. So in a brand new interview out today, Attorney General Merrick Garland made a solemn vow to the American people, and we are going to hold him to it, because justice matters. So retired Army General and former National Security Advisor Mike Flynn pleads the Fifth, invokes his Fifth Amendment right against self-incrimination when he's subpoenaed to testify before a congressional committee investigating the deadly attack on our Capitol. Friends, as a nation, how did we get here? Let's talk about that, because justice matters. All right, to all of our Team Justice friends, I am thrilled to have my friend Kim Whaley, who I've known for several years now. She is a law professor at the University of Baltimore School of Law. You all probably know that she is a CBS News legal analyst, and I'm sure you've seen her on air. She's the author of multiple books, and the one that has just published in recent days, her latest is How to Think Like a Lawyer and Why. So, as Putin's illegal war of aggression against Ukraine rages on, let's circle back to Donald Trump's victimization of the Ukrainian people when he bribed and extorted President Zelensky, seeking a dirty political favor. Crimes that we have not forgotten. Crimes for which Donald Trump needs to be held accountable. Because justice matters. In most criminal investigations, there comes a moment when prosecutors realize it's time for an arrest. It's time for the takedown. Given what Donald Trump just said at his recent hate rally, given what he expressly urged his followers to do, we have to ask ourselves, and frankly, we have to ask the Department of Justice, is it finally time to indict and arrest Donald Trump for at least some of his crimes? Let's talk about that, because justice matters. So prosecutors just filed a motion seeking to keep Enrique Tarrio, the leader of the so-called Proud Boys organization, detained, that is, jailed, while he awaits trial. And the prosecutors dropped a little nugget in that motion about Donald Trump. Now, to be clear, there are lots of other evidentiary nuggets out there, and when viewed in combination, one thing is absolutely clear. Donald Trump is the leader of the criminal conspiracy to overturn the results of the 2020 presidential election. Let's talk about that, because justice matters. How should we view what Vladimir Putin is doing to Ukraine? And how should we view what Donald Trump has done and continues to do to the U.S.? Should we view it as politics? I don't think so. Let's talk about that, because justice matters. So Steve Bannon was in court yesterday in his contempt of Congress case. How did that go? And more importantly, do we really think his trial will go in July? Let's talk about that, because justice matters. So Mark Meadows is not only being investigated for contempt of Congress, he's now added another criminal investigation to his resume. So here we go. Let's talk about Mark Meadows' double-wide voter fraud. Because justice matters. So some of the headlines in recent days make it pretty clear that at this moment in time, we seem to have two Americas. And the question each one of us has to tackle is, which America do we want to live in? Which America do we want to leave our children and our grandchildren? Let's talk about that. Because justice matters. So some Republican senators are squawking about the Supreme Court nomination of Judge Ketanji Brown Jackson. What do we think is really motivating these Republican squawks? Let's talk about that. Because justice matters. So Donald Trump just filed another appeal, again trying to delay his day of reckoning. This time, he's fighting against having to testify in New York State Attorney General Letitia James' civil fraud investigation. But friends, Donald Trump is not going to outsmart Tish James. Not by a long shot. Let's talk about that. Because justice matters. So Donald Trump has flipped on Mo Brooks. Politically, that is. But it gives rise to one obvious question. Has Mo Brooks flipped on Donald Trump? Let's talk about that. Because justice matters. So the prosecutor who was heading up the Trump criminal investigation in New York put in his resignation letter that the evidence supports the conclusion that Donald Trump committed multiple felony crimes. And then that prosecutor resigned because the New York District Attorney refused to indict Donald Trump, refused to hold Donald Trump accountable for the crimes he committed. What now? Let's talk about that. Because justice matters. Corruption in the Oval Office meets and partners with corruption at the Supreme Court. Let's talk about that. Because justice matters. So after what sure feels like a third strike, I think we have to ask ourselves, has New York District Attorney Alvin Bragg struck out on the justice front? Let's talk about that. Because justice matters. So now that we know that Ginny Thomas, wife of Supreme Court Justice Clarence Thomas, coordinated with the White House, trying to overturn the results of our presidential election, what will our government do about it? To address it, to deal with it, to fix it, and yes, to hold Ginny Thomas and her husband accountable. Let's talk about that. Because justice matters. So Congress is preparing to refer two more people to the Department of Justice for criminal prosecution for contempt of Congress, Peter Navarro and Dan Scavino. But like rush hour traffic, things seem to be backing up over at DOJ. Let's talk about that. Because justice matters. So a federal judge just found by a preponderance of the evidence that Donald Trump committed crimes in his efforts to overturn the results of the 2020 presidential election. Let's talk about why that ruling is as important as it is historic. Because justice matters. All right, friends, I am thrilled that we have Asha Rangappa. I hope I didn't do violence to your last name.
You didn't. Perfect.
Former FBI agent, lawyer herself. She teaches at Yale. Her academic credentials are crazy impressive. Do you think Merrick Garland and the Department of Justice are actively involved in a criminal investigation of Trump and company, the command structure of the insurrection?
When I think about this question, Glenn, I have to believe they are. I mean, I don't know how they could not be, because I believe that they would be duty bound to be investigating it.
You know, I've often compared the Department of Justice to a big old steamer ship. You know, it takes a long time to gather steam and gain momentum as it investigates huge criminal conspiracies. Well, based on some new reporting, it looks like the big old DOJ steamer ship is pulling away from the dock. Let's talk about that, because justice matters.